Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Hessian Scrum. Joining me today is Jay Fernandez from the incredible Floridian death metal band Brutality, as well as a brief stint in both Eulogy and Monstrosity. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's go through Brutality. So Brutality is a really interesting band because I always see them, well, you as being and Monstrosity as being the kind of like this is the standard for what Floridian death metal is.
Yeah, I've seen, I think one of my favorite comments I ever saw was like, it was a review that some guy did, and he's like, if you looked up Florida death metal in the encyclopedia, Brutality should be the band because we kind of encompass everything. You know what I mean? We've got Morbid Angel type elements, deicide type elements, obituary, slow, doomy stuff. And I think that's just because of, they were our influences. We were all from the same area. We all grew up with that stuff. And the thing about Brutality was it was just we played what we would want to hear. You know what I mean? The stuff that influenced us. So that's why I think we had such a wide range of influences in our music. Plus, we all pretty much contributed to the writing. Even, I mean, everybody from the drummer to the singer, everybody. Our drummer wrote lyrics. I wrote lyrics. We all wrote riffs. So it was a good band. It was fun.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I've noticed, throughout the kind of, the main trilogy, right, of albums, is that the songs tend to be very narrative and very emotional, which is not what something you would expect from a band called Brutality.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It was like the Chuck from Death used to say it like something along the lines of real life is scarier than demons and magic make believe stuff. And I think especially as time went on, we got more like we had songs about the environment and just real world horrors as opposed to imaginary demons and dragons and all that shit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And what's interesting, yeah, because throughout the album, throughout the albums, you get all the way to In Mourning, and that's when it gets really emotional, and you're almost playing melodic death metal at that point.
Yeah, that was I wasn't in the band at that point. Um, but yeah, that was Scott and Jeff because well, I think Jim was still in the band then too, but there had kind of been a rotating cast of characters guitar wise. But I think that album was Jeff and Scott particularly had been doing it for a long time and there was a lot of frustrations and everything that came with being signed and always feeling we were getting passed over in the industry and in terms of tours and stuff like that. So I think that probably came out more on In Mourning than any other album, songwriting wise and lyric wise and stuff.
Because it's funny. It feels like the Floridian bands who got kind of bigger were the ones who were a lot more kind of simplistic in their mindset during
Yeah,
during that time, and it feels like Brutality was kind of overlooked because it's not an al Screams of Anguish is not an album, for example, that you can hear once and fully get. You really have to like focus in with your headphones on each song, right?
yeah, yeah. I think the other thing with Brutality, one of the reasons why I don't think we got as big as some of the other bands was because of the lineup changes and because I was out of the band right after Screams was recorded, and then when they did their first tour of Europe, they went with one guitar player because Donnie had some kind of issues, so he was unable to tour. So they ended up going to Europe with one guitar player. That wasn't really good because we were a two guitar band, all the harmonies and stuff. And then on top of that, I believe it was the first tour that they did. The promoter screwed up all of the dates. So the date on the poster was actually either a day before or a day after the actual show was. So and they toured Europe twice, and both times that they did it with one guitar player, which I think was to their detriment because, like I said, we were a two guitar band. Um, and it was just Brutality was always kind of an inconsistent band in that respect in terms of changing members and doing everything with that. So I think that played a big part in if we would have had more consistency, I think the band would have been bigger ultimately, but that just wasn't how it turned out, unfortunately.
It's such a weird thing, even as a fan of the band, I get confused because, for example, Larry Sapp, who was like such an important part of the kind of demo era, I struggle to believe that, he wasn't on Screams of Anguish, for example. And then,
Yeah, that was actually they Jeff had had some issues with Larry and Donnie. I don't know too much about it because I was friends with those guys back then, and I was a fan of the demos and stuff. Um, but they had approached me. I guess it was around 91, something like that, and they were like, "Hey, we're thinking about kicking Sap out of the band, um, and we want to know if you'd be." Oh, actually, they said we want to know if you want to be in the band, and I was like, "Well, I don't really want to do it if Sap is in the band because seeing them live, he did some things that just didn't like. He wore a cape and did some other weird stuff live that just didn't jive with me. I wasn't really into that." So I was like, I would do it if Sap wasn't in the band. And they're like, well, actually, we're kicking Sap out of the band. So I was on board at that point. And yeah, it was just a weird time, man. It was like I said, I had known those guys for a long time, but it just kind of happened. And we were together a fairly short time before we did the demo for that ended up getting us signed to Nuclear Blast. And then that was it, man. It was we were ready to go.
yeah. I mean, and but then you eventually did return for Sea of Ignorance, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. We did. I actually, me and Donnie. Well, actually, in I think it was 2010 or 2011. Um, we we realized how big of a fan base we actually had due to MySpace. Like somebody had reached out to me on MySpace, and once some people found out I was on there, um, they were blowing me up, and I started looking at, like I'm going, where, there's people from all over the world that are like Brutality fans. So I had approached the guys and showed them like, look, how many people know our music and stuff, and it kind of freaked everybody out because we really didn't think we were that, even we're still relatively small, but we're bigger than we thought we were. Um, and I approached those guys and I was like, we should maybe try and get back together. So what we did was we actually had the original Screams of Anguish lineup, got back together, me, Jim, Donnie, Scott, Jeff, and we booked some shows in Tampa where we did the Screams of Anguish album in its entirety. And when we announced that online, like we had people that came all the way up to Florida from South America. We had people that flew from Europe to see us, and we were like, wow, this is fucking crazy. Like we had no idea the reach we had. Um, so I think it was around 2012 we got together, and we had been together for a little bit, and we did the Ruins of Humans EP, and that was a pretty big success. We put it on ourselves, and it seemed like a lot of people were into it. And then we were supposed to have the new album out. The Sea of Ignorance was supposed to come out like 4 years before it actually came out, but we had some more inner turmoil in the band, and it just didn't work out that way. So it took us quite a while to get that album done. Um, but yeah, we eventually got it done, and that's one of my only complaint about that record is I feel like it's too short. It's only like 30 minutes long, and that bugs me. And one of the songs is a Bathory cover that's like 11 minutes long. So it's I felt like it was too short, and I wish we were able to do um a nice lengthy full length record, but I guess that just wasn't the case, unfortunately.
It is a shame, ultimately, because I think, the last thing you guys ever did was just the kind of the mega reissue of all the demos throughout, like from 86 to 91,
Yeah.
1991. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that was well received. It's a shame, man. We had I think one of the biggest things with the reason why we ended up completely disbanding was COVID, honestly, because we had been working at this again since like 2012, 2013, and then in 2019 we played Maryland Death Fest, which was great because none of us had ever played it before. And our response, the crowd response at MDF was just insane. Like it was amazing. I'm so happy we got to do that because there was a couple thousand people there, um, and they were just into it so hard. And we actually had Netherlands Death Fest scheduled and Symbolic Death Fest, which I believe was in the Czech Republic, which we were going to headline. And we had all these fests scheduled. We were getting requests for more fests, and then COVID happened, and everything shut down, and all the shows were canceled, and then that was it. That was pretty much it. It sucked.
Oh my God, that really is a shame. But yeah, I think people are finally waking up thanks to the internet, and now we have so much kind of insight into what bands were actually good. So it doesn't surprise me that Brutality would have exploded more in like 2016 than in
Yeah,
93.
it's really weird, man, because we're still on Spotify and everything, and I get the all the numbers from Spotify every month. And historically speaking, on Spotify, you know how it breaks down your fan base into the different demographics. I think our biggest demographic was like mid 30s to like mid 50s. And just recently, for the first time since we've been on Spotify, our biggest demographic was like uh, 18 to 25 or like, late teens to early 30s or something. So I find that really strange and that we're resonating with a much younger group of fans than we have, since we've been back together. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. But one thing I find really funny, I still can't quite wrap my head around it, is on Sea of Ignorance, why would a death metal band cover Bathory of all things?
It's a song that Clay from Eulogy actually turned me on to Bathory back when I was in Eulogy, and the Hammerheart album is just I don't know, man. There's just something about that record that I've always loved. It sounds like the soundtrack to a fucking Conan movie or something. I don't know. It's just there's something really special about it, and I've always loved Shores and Flames, and it was just something we talked about, and I kind of mentioned it as a joke, like we should do a cover of Shores and Flames, and everybody was into it. So I was like, well, fuck it, let's do it. And I actually love it, man. I think it's great. But like I said, my only gripe is that it's 11 minutes long and there's not really a bunch of other new material on that album. So I did get a couple of messages from some fans where they were like, man, you should have just done like two or three more original songs than the Bathory cover. But that's just the way it worked out.
I can understand. So yeah, let's dive into the details of Screams of Anguish because I mean that for me personally is probably my favorite. And obviously, the others are very good, but I think what makes that one so special to me is that it's really aggressive, it's really hectic, but it makes a lot of sense, and that the emotional content is really kind of obvious. It's not like you guys said, "Hey, let's play the fastest, weirdest, heaviest stuff." But you actually made these songs that really stand out and they have their own identity.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that a big part of that is the fact that we all kind of came from different places musically. We were all big death metal fans, but at the same time, I was into like fusion and jazz stuff. Donnie was like into country, oddly enough. Um, Scott was into like a lot of hardcore stuff. Um, Jeff was into like all the old thrash, which we were all kind of into thrash and stuff. But I just think we also practiced a lot. It was like 3 or 4 times a week we would get together in Jeff's mom's garage, and we just every practice was like, hey, I got this riff or I got this riff, and then well, I got this that'll go with it. And it was, I think, a big part of the success of that record for me anyway was that we worked really well together. So if I had two riffs, Jeff would have something that fit together perfectly. Donnie would add something else to it. So it was like a soup, and we were just all kind of throwing different ingredients into it, and it ended up being really good, you know? Um, and then I think that my playing in particular at that point, up until that point, Brutality never really had a melodic element. Um, it was just really kind of thrash and aggressive dive bomb solos, you know, Kerry King, Rick Ross type stuff. And I think I added that element to the band, and I think that helped kind of with the emotional content. You know, like there's a song on there where I'm playing like a lead behind Scott while he's singing, and even still today, like 30 something years later, it makes my hair on my arms stand up when I hear it. You know, it just makes it so much more. It's like aggressive, but it's like I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like got this orchestral kind of feeling to it where it's just really uplifting and it's just awesome. I love it. It's still one of my favorite albums.
Because you know, one part that really does the same thing for me as well is on "These Walls Shall Be Your Graves." So you know, it starts out with this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, like it's like a very normal like tremolo picked riff, you know, the death metal with these kind
Yeah.
of weird little fills that constantly change, and it
Yeah.
goes into this like massive, like something that would sound like out of a Doom album, right? Completely different.
Yeah.
And I love that contrast.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with something so purposeful, so orchestral, like you said, in a practice space?
Um, it's it was just it's kind of easy in that the one we were all really connected on that level. Like we could all kind of feel where the songs were going, and I think it's because we all worked so well together and had been play we were playing so much together that we kind of just let the music take us to where it was going, and we were all fans of that. You know, jarring. You know, start stop. You know, go from this to this. Like really try and throw people off. And it just kind of became a signature thing with our style, I think, to where I had people tell me several times over the years, like the Screams of Anguish album, they're like, I'll put that on at a party, and people will be like, oh, this is great. And then by like the fourth or fifth song, they're like, is this still the same fucking band? You know, are we still listening to the same record? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, holy shit, you know, because we got the two little musical interludes that Donnie and I did, where his is like acoustic guitar and mine's the whole orchestra thing. Um, it just goes back to the varied influences. We just played what we would want to hear if we bought an album. You know, we were trying to make something that we would be happy to buy, and I think we succeeded on a lot of levels with that record.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me because Sympathy and Spirit World, what I love is that they cut up the album so perfectly because it is an intense listen, you know, in one go.
Yeah,
But I love they're like, you know, palate cleansers.
yeah, and that goes. We were all also really big King Diamond fans, and so like it's just kind of that. I like the one thing that I feel is lacking in a lot of modern metal is the vibe. You know, like there was a whole thing like when I used to buy records or cassettes, it didn't matter, cassettes, albums, CDs, whatever. There was like this, some records just had a vibe to where when you got home and you opened up the cassette tape and you opened up the lyric sheet and you had it playing, it was like, ooh, I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. Like I remember when I bought South of Heaven by Slayer, and I was like, oh, this just feels like I'm transported to another world. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like I was doing something I shouldn't be doing or something. Like I don't know how to explain it. It was just there was just a like a vibe around the music. And I think that that album Screams definitely had that. And I think the instrumentals go a long way in kind of helping that out because, like you said, it's like a palate cleanser. It's like, and that's one of the reasons why people are like, "Wait, are we listening to the same album? Is this the same band?" You know. But we've always all been fans of stuff like that. So I wish more bands did stuff like that. And I think that social media is to blame for a lot of the vibes missing because when we were coming up, it was like, oh, King Diamond, he lives in a castle with no electricity, and you know, Morbid Angel kills cats at their band practice. There's all these weird rumors and shit that went around, and now it's like, oh, so and so's, you know, my favorite singer for my metal band is going to a colonoscopy at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. He just posted about it on Facebook. You know, it just takes away from the whole mystery of everything, and that's sorely lacking in today's scene, I think. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like bands like what's that band? Damn it, I can't think of their name right now. Not Ghost. Um, they're a wildly popular metal band. They all wear masks.
Sleep Token?
Um, Sleep Token, yeah, dude. I think that that's one of the biggest reasons they are as popular as they are is because they're pretty talented musically, but nobody knows who they are. You know what I mean? Everybody's guessing. It's like when Kiss was around. Nobody had ever seen them without their makeup. It's all that stuff adds to the mystery and the vibe. You know what I mean? And like I said, nowadays it's that your singer's breaking up with his girlfriend and has roommate problems, and it's just it sucks, man. It really sucks. I hate it.
Yeah. But then again, you take for example the Floridian scene, right? Every single one of you had their their identity. There was like
Yeah,
no
yeah,
two bands that sounded alike. And there is a Floridian sound. You can tell if a band's like, oh, these guys are inspired by Florida, but
yeah.
none of you were the same.
Yeah, I think that's really cool too. Um, and it reminds me of like the Seattle grunge scene in a lot of ways because you had all these bands, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. They were all friends and all hung out at the same clubs, but yet they all sounded wildly different. You know what I mean? But you could tell they were all kind of from the same scene. And I really did enjoy that about Florida. That time period where we were considered the death metal capital of the world was pretty fucking magical because we had all these bands that all lived here. A lot of them practiced in the same practice space, the People Storage. So like you could go to People Storage and see Nocturnus practice, and then three doors down was Morbid Angel, and then there was Incubus, and then it was like Iced Earth even practiced in there. So there was just a shit ton of bands, and yeah, like you said, they all sounded different, and I was a fan of that. I never felt like we were copying anybody or there wasn't really I don't know. There was a lot more bands that never got signed from Florida that were doing shows, and even those bands had their own style. We didn't have any bands that I remember where you were like, "Oh, they're just like a copy of Obituary," or "These guys sound just like Deicide." Everybody really strived to do their own thing, and I really was a fan of that.
Yeah. I mean, but in terms of scene, was there a lot of competition, or was it just like mainly camaraderie, everyone kind of supporting themselves, everyone?
I mean, a lot of people were friends, but like I've told this to numerous people. It's like, when we were all young, but when we played a show with somebody, like, and I've told numerous people, like, hey, dude, I love you, you're my friend, and we can hang out and have a beer before the show. But when I get on stage, we're trying to fucking crush you. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I remember the first time Brutality ever played with Eulogy, and all the guys in Eulogy were dear friends of mine. And it was Eulogy, Brutality, and Monstrosity. And Eulogy played and fucking blew the roof off of the brass mug. And it was like nothing I had ever seen before. Jarrett's writing was so just fucking weird and cool. And Avery was such a great front man. And like they just had a very unique sound. And they got up on stage and just fucking crushed. And I was so fucking mad, dude. I remember going to the guys at Brutality and I'm like, what are you fucking smiling about? Like, we just got our asses handed to us. Those guys were fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Like, it genuinely pissed me off that they were better than us. And I guess, thankfully I got to end up playing with them for a while. Um, but yeah, dude, I think that in any scene you're going to have some competition, but in general, most of the people were very, cool with each other, and still are to this day. I still talk with a lot of people that were in the scene. I talk with Murphy regularly, and um, that's one of the things that's pretty cool about it is um, I made a lot of friendships back then that I still have to this day. Um, and I continue to make new friends because of, the death metal scene in general through Facebook and social media and stuff. And it's just like, I remember, oh, death metal's going to die. It's like, when? Because it's still going, dude. I mean, it may, it ebbs and flows and like it may not get as popular as it was at one point, but it's just stayed going. There's still every day there's, 100 new death metal bands that pop up. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, what are the current bands that excite you, that like kind of pique your interest?
I'm a really big fan of Vitriol. Um, and Kyle Rasmussen, his writing style is very fucking aggressive. And like that is probably my favorite more modern band that's out right now. I just think they have like this aggressiveness. Their songwriting is really cool. It's got some emotional content to it. Um, I'm a fan of uh, Cynic. I've always been, but they're not new, but like they're still playing. You know what I mean? So like they're like, I love those guys. Let me think who else. I actually, well, they're not even really that new anymore. But like bands like Job for a Cowboy, like the last stuff I heard that they put out, I actually thought was really good. I'm kind of all over the place with the bands I like. There was actually one, damn it, I'll never remember their name now. It was actually a band that I listened to the other day. Um, damn, that's gonna kill me. But they were fucking amazing. I wish I could remember their name. Um, damn, that's gonna bother me. I also like Koroidia. They're from South Florida. Um, they have again like I like bands that where like you can be fast and you know you can have fast riffs, but I like aggressiveness and I like bands that have an emotional heft to their music where it's like I don't just feel like it's five guys up on stage playing as fast as they can. You know what I mean? I've never really been a fan of that because it's anybody can do that. It's make my make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. You know what I mean? That's what I'm looking for when I see a band. Um, Skeletal Earth is cool. I like those guys. Um, Trying to think of if there's any local bands. I haven't been to a show in a while. Um, I actually like the Sanguis Sugarbog. I guess that's how you say their name, or Sanguisabog. I don't fucking know. It's weird, but they're actually really cool. They're heavy as fuck. Um, that's all I can think of right now. I wish I could remember that band from Texas. I know they're from Texas. I can't think of their fucking name. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. It's also really interesting because, I don't think you're currently making music, but you're literally in a studio with like a million amps and everything.
Yeah, I am. I'm currently in a band called Polker Morte with Jarrett from Eulogy and Clay from Eulogy. It was a band that they started a couple of years ago, and I had done like some guest solos on one of their records, and I did another guest solo on a song that they had written, and we're actually in the process of writing material for a full length album. But that's not really death metal; it's more like doom doomy Paradise Lost kind of style stuff. Again, it's got a really high emotional content, which is what attracted me to it in the first place. I just I hear the songs and it takes me to another place. It's awesome. Um, and then I'm in another band called Last Rejection that is like it's a fairly new band that some friends of mine started, and that's more like a southern doomy, sludgy type of band, real kind of loose, groovy stuff, more blues based playing. But I'm all over the place style wise. So like I like playing everything. But I would really love if Brutality were able to do another record. That's my dream. Honestly, I would love to do that, but we'll see. I guess if that's in the cards at some point or whatever. I hope so.
Let's say, for example, you were to do a new Brutality album. What would be the kind of musical direction you'd like to see? Because we've seen so much from Brutality with all, the 20 million people you've had in the band and everything.
Yeah. I think the um the last kind of EP we did, the Sempiternity, there's a couple of songs on that record that and then there's a couple of songs on Sea of Ignorance like 48 to 52, um the song Sea of Ignorance. But like I it's that kind of direction. It's kind of it's brutality for sure, but it's not, 30 riffs shoved into a 4 minute song. It's more like simplistic, like the Monstrosity album that I worked on with Lee in Dark Purity. That's kind of where I feel like I hit my stride as a songwriter, with songs like Angel's Venom, where it's really, I think that song has maybe three riffs in it, and it's just kind of like different permutations of one riff just played different ways. And I was drawn to that kind of style. It translates really well to a live setting. Um, it gives people a chance to like really listen and hear what's going on and kind of latch onto it, and everything's not flying by you at a million miles an hour. And then that's one of the things I hate about bands that do that, where it's like they'll take 30 riffs, shove them into a 4 minute song, and the best riff in the song they play for maybe 15 seconds, or they play it one time and you're going, fuck, play that one some more. You know what I mean? I was just getting into it, and then you change to another riff and then you never hear that one again. I hate that shit. So yeah, I just think a more focused, um, kind of simpler approach, but still heavy. I think we've touched on it several times over the past couple of records, and I just see us going more in that direction if it happens.
Hopefully it will.
Yeah, I really hope so, man. That would be awesome. I would love nothing more than for that to happen. We're actually going to be there's a death metal museum here in Florida that just opened up recently, and they've been doing some events and having bands come. And Brutality is slated to do an event, I believe, in February, where we're just going to be there signing autographs and with a bunch of other bands. And I'll be able to sit and talk with Jeff and Scott for a while, and kick some ideas around. And I really hope it happens. The other reason is because we had Ronnie Palmer, who's an amazing drummer, and excuse me, he got to play on the Sempiternity record, but we never got to do a whole album with him, and I think it's a shame because I think he's an incredible drummer. He actually plays for Malevolent Creation right now, and several other bands, but he's just a fantastic musician, and he's not only a great drummer, he's a fucking awesome guitar player too. But yeah, I feel like the last incarnation of Brutality, it was me, Jeff, Scott, Ronnie on drums, and Jared from Eulogy on guitar. And that was not only the best live lineup that we ever had, but the best lineup in terms of writing and working together and all getting along. So I would really love to do another album solely to get those, the five of us in a room again, to really sit down and work out a new record, because I think it would just be amazing. I really do.
I mean, it would be better than the modern way of like, hey, check out what I sent you on transfer, and then someone else sending in
Yeah.
like, copy paste something on Pro Tools.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot to be said for that, and I know there's a lot of bands that do that, and there's some bands that do it pretty successfully, but and I've done it to some extent, several times with different projects, but there's nothing that's better than being in a room with the other people and being able to get that instant gratification of like, hey, what if we do this riff four times, and then instead of going here, we take the song here. And then you get to do it right then, and you go, yeah, that fucking worked. That's awesome. You get to, I think that's one of the reasons why Screams of Anguish turned out the way it did, is because we wrote it, even though we would come to practice with, riffs, by the time we got through, we just let the song take us where it was going. So you'd be playing it, and then, I have this idea, and then let's do this, and then how about I'll do this harmony over that, and then that would inspire somebody else in the band to be like, let's do this. You know what I mean? There's nothing beats that. And I guess you could do that to some respect, sending stuff through the internet, but it would just take a lot longer. And I think the inspiration, it comes and goes, and if you don't grab it while it's there, the chances of capturing that are slim to none.
Mm. Let's talk about your involvement in Monstrosity because you were quite involved with that album. But the funny thing is that if I remember correctly, you don't actually play on it.
Yep. Um, I got um booted out of the band.
No.
And that was because we were in a weird situation in that band. I was in the band for I don't know, I think a year. Um, we played two shows. One was in Columbia and one was here in Tampa. Um, and I only saw our bass player one time, Kelly Conlon. That's because he lived out of state. Great bass player. And I was like, oh man, I get to jam with a bass player that played with Death. And, I was really stoked on it. And then, like, I never practiced with him one time. It was always just me and Lee in a room playing the songs. And while that was fun, again, it was just like, it gets kind of boring after a while because I didn't have another guitar player there to hear the harmonies. So it was just kind of very unfulfilling after a while. So I stopped being really jazzed about going to practice. And Lee's a big stickler on practicing. So he was like, it's not going to work out. Um, but yeah, they had Jason Morgan, who had played on the album before that, play my parts. He even learned my solos that I had done on the demo. I think we demoed like 3 or 4 songs from that album. And yeah, he actually learned my solos that were on the demo and played them. It was kind of crazy. Now I think it's cool, but back then it really pissed me off.
That's- But what's interesting about the album because Millennium, the album that came just before it, was really technical and all over the place. And in Dark Purity
Yeah.
is like the opposite. Like, were you kind of listening to Millennium and just going, nah, that's not what I want to do?
No, I just think that I had to learn a bunch of songs off Millennium, and I will say it's one of some of the hardest stuff that I've ever had to play. Tux, Jason Morgan was an amazing guitar player, great writer, but that's not really my style. So again, with me and Lee, that record was just me and Lee in a room together, showing each other riffs and jamming on the songs over and over again and building them up from the ground up. And like, hey, let's do this, and then let's go here. And that was, like I said, that was great. But even Lee will tell you, like, as much as people love the Millennium album, those songs don't really translate well to a live setting. Um, and I don't, I've really yet to see a super hyper technical death metal band whose music translates well live. Um, everything's going by you at a million miles an hour. Rips are changing every 10 seconds, and you add into that iffy live sound and everything. And it's just a lot of times, man, it's sad because you'll hear an album where it's like, man, it's technically amazing. And then you go see them live and it's just, that's what it sounds like when somebody's singing over top of it. And it's like, well, I can see that he's playing some really what looks like technical stuff, but it just sounds like fucking noise out here. So like, I don't know. We didn't set out to do anything different. I don't think it was just kind of the way that I wrote, and the songs that Lee had written, the riffs that Lee had written, were kind of already in the same vein. So it just worked out really well. And I'm happy because I've heard from a lot of people that that's like their favorite or in their top 2 or 3 Monstrosity albums. So that's like a nice feather in my cap to have. I like that. I really do like the songs that we wrote on that record. I wish I could have played on it, but whatever.
All right. So I think this is my final question before let you go. Uh, you've been involved in death metal for such a long time, playing, being involved with the bands, even to this day involved in social media and playing in like, 3 projects. How have you managed to keep that passion for so long?
Um, I love music. You know what I mean? It's not just about death metal. It's just and I just love music. I mean, obviously I'd do it if I didn't make any money because I've never really made any money playing death metal. A couple $100 here and there. I think the most I've ever made off of a record that I participated in was I think 2 years ago, Lee sent me $500 for I've actually made more playing guest solos on people's projects than I have from doing my own full albums
Oh my
and
God.
putting them out, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I just love music, man. I love being in a room with other people and playing music. I love I'll always do it no matter what. I love it. And there's something about metal in particular that just when I've played in all kinds of bands from, doing Journey covers to, funk, blues, you name it. But people getting up and dancing, that's cool. People looking out into the crowd and seeing people sing your lyrics or whatever back to you, that's cool. But when you play in a death metal band and the crowd, you've got 1,000 or even 100 people in a room, and your drummer goes bam, 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 and does the count off, and then the entire room just goes ape shit, and bodies are flying everywhere, and it's just, there is nothing like that feeling. It is fucking amazing to see what music does to people. So that's why I'll always do music no matter what. And one of the reasons why I'll always continue to do death metal or some kind of metal, because I've never experienced anything like that with any other style of music. The fans are passionate. Um, they're crazy as fuck, and it's just an amazing feeling to know that I mean, shit, dude, I had a guy that sent me a video last year of his wife walking down the aisle to the sympathy instrumental of Screams of Anguish. And that blew me away, dude. I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, and over the years, I've heard stories, from people that are like, oh man, we grew up listening to this. Like, even dudes in other bands who I like, who, I'll get to eventually play a show with, and then I'll meet them backstage and they'll be like, dude, we drove to high school every day and put Screams of Anguish in the cassette player and listened to it every day for our entire senior year. Like shit like that, the connection that I've made with people who I don't even know through my music is one of the reasons why I'll always do it. Because there's always the chance of that happening. Even just doing something as simple as like I post guitar videos on my Facebook page, and I'll have people send me the most beautiful messages, like, oh, just me playing in a room, and they'll be like, dude, I listened to that song today and I was going through a really tough time with, my mom is sick or something, or I'm going through a breakup, and that song really touched my heart. And it's like, dude, why wouldn't I continue to do that? You know what I mean? It's amazing. Just amazing. I'm just a big fan of music, and yeah, I'll do it forever, man, until I die.
Perfect. Any final words?
Uh no, I guess just play less riffs, write better songs, um, stop using the same guitar sound as everybody else, and don't be a dick.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Thank you, man.
Have a nice day.
You too.